Watch out, let me get a shot. Where they at? Where they at?
Go to my rooftop. Hey! Give me a fucking 42 in here,
We're east of the riverbed, and we're taking fire from the west. Roger, stand by, we're popping smoke. Gun runs north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Welcome to the Combat Leadership Podcast. Here's our host, Mike Etor.
Our guest today is retired Marine Corps Master Sergeant Michael Halterman. Michael spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, retired as a Master Sergeant, spent all of his time in the infantry field, to include the last half of his career as a critical skills operator in the Marine Special Operations Command. He's got a lot of experience, combat experience, got a lot of leadership advice, and just general all-around goodness to spread to our young warriors out there. So, Michael, welcome to the Combat Leadership Podcast.
Mike, thanks for having me.
Well, I know the bio didn't do you justice, and I actually think you are the very first Marine Raider on the podcast. So tell us first, give us a minute more, a little bit deeper on Michael Halterman, and then tell us a little bit about your time in MARSOC, which I'm sure everybody is going to zone in on right away. They want to hear about that, you know?
Sure. So I grew up in small town America that just happened to be on the central coast of California. So I grew up playing organized sports, lots of soccer, football, baseball, and all of those things, and learned the value of teamwork and team effort and the outcomes of that. I also got to play a lot of non-organized sports, rock climbing, mountain biking, things like that, where I really learned the value of creativity and the endless possibility of creativity. Skateboarding and surfing and all those things. Had a really tight-knit, close family and a really strong grandmother who really kind of steered the whole family. So I got a lot of wisdom from my grandmother, and I had a really close relationship with her. And she really taught me, you know, the ethics of hard work and being proud of, whatever job is in front of you. And really, it didn't matter what the job is or what your task is. You take pride in it. It's yours.
Yeah.
And so those translated really well into the military after high school. I went in not directly after high school, but more or less. I'd basically worked since I was 16. I had every sort of kind of blue collar job you could have, from weed abatement to mowing lawns to general labor for home building and things like that. Did that all the way through high school, like I said, and then went into the Marine Corps I always had the intention to join the military. I was the kid who was always kind of running around at an early age, at least, in camouflage utilities and playing with fake guns back then, before they had to be neon colors and have the red caps on the end, right?
Yeah.
So I would run around with those. Grew out of that a little bit, but, there was a lot of definitely a lot of Rambo, a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger, Commando, and Predator were all a huge influence, and eventually got me into the Marine Corps. And yeah, I always knew I wanted to be an infantryman, and got several opportunities during the recruiting phase to be something else, and I had no desire. So joined as an infantryman, ended up as an 0351 assaultman, which I'm pretty sure doesn't exist anymore. I think they actually did away with that MOS. Got to do that for my first enlistment or two. From there, and this was late 90s, so before 9/11. And, much different Marine Corps then. And then 9/11, everything changes. And the world is forever different. So in 2003, I ended up being part of the invasion force, and then went to be a combat instructor. Did that for very successfully, and had a great time doing it, although we were, out of the fight, so to speak. But it was really a pivotal time during SOI's transformation from a not so great school to really becoming a center of excellence, which I think it is now, and really producing at a high level much better infantrymen. And so I got to be part of that. And then I was just right time, right place when MARSOC started. I was still in really good shape. I had the opportunity to really hone my craft as an 0351. And then I ended up gaining the 0341 MOS also while I was there. And yeah, right time, right place, and just dumb enough to try out for MARSOC, and went and tried out. And I spent from 2007, which was pretty much the very beginning of 1st Marine Special Operations Battalion, now 1st Marine Raider Battalion. One of the first deployments out of there, and then retired in 2018.
Where was your deployment to?
Very first deployment in MARSOC was to Afghanistan.
Okay, great. And do those deployments, are they 6-month duration, 9 months?
So back then, it was before SOCOM had a mandatory no more than 6 months.
Okay.
The first, I think, 2, maybe 3 deployments were anywhere from, could be as short as 6 months, but could be as long as 8 or 9 months, depending on if you're advanced party and remain behind.
Yeah, interesting. And I know nothing about MARSOC, Michael. So when you deployed with MARSOC, did you deploy as a platoon, a company, a battalion, an attachment to a BLT? How did that work?
So ironic, you should preface it that way, because we had no idea what MARSOC was either when we started it, right?
Yeah.
We were the joke we used to say was we were trying to literally build the aircraft and fly it at the same time, and get in the fight. So my first deployment, we never deployed this way again. So the way we deployed the very first time was we had 4 teams, and 3 teams went off and did various episodic missions around the globe. So we had one team go do Cobra Gold in Thailand. We had another team go do a JSET in the Philippines. We had another team doing something, I don't even remember where it was. And then my team was the MEU team, and we went on the ship. So we took all the usual stuff onto the boat. We were on the Bonhomme Richard, if I remember correctly. And we were supposed to be the special operations attachment to the MEU. So we did a good portion of that float. And what we were learning while doing that was Dad, if you will, the Marine Corps said, this is what we need you to do. And then Mom, SOCOM said, no. We said, we want you in Afghanistan. We said that 3 months ago. Get off the ship immediately and get to Afghanistan. Get the rest of your teams to Afghanistan immediately. So we learned very quickly that it was much, much different environment than what we were used to as being part of the Marine Corps and being a part of SOCOM. So we quickly transitioned after about 2.5, 3 months of being, quote, on the boat and hitting a couple of ports. And then we put the whole company back together. So all 4 teams back together, along with the headquarters and all the support staff, logistics, comm, the usual support package. We more or less got back together in Kuwait, and then caught flights to Afghanistan, into Farah province is where we ended up specifically.
Were you operating? And please, I'm going to preface this, Michael. I know nothing about MARSOC, and I know not so much more about Afghanistan's AO and all that. So please, if I go somewhere where I'm not supposed to, just
Sure.
tell me, But so you guys go there. Are you kind of an independent task force, or did they roll you under a special ops task force? How did that work?
No, that's a great question. So yeah, they roll you under, all special operations teams get put under a special operations task force. There's been various sizes at different times, but essentially we were under what would be like a regimental size AO essentially at the time. And they told us more or less go out west and disrupt the enemy. Was I think the extent of our mission statements. That left it very wide open to interpretation. So we did quite a bit with that.
Yeah. Wow. That's a dream mission. I can just imagine people, kind of thinking, watch this shit,
Yes. Yeah, very much. Yeah.
It could be worse. I love it. So it worked out well for you?
As far as a first deployment, being the first time all together working under a SOCOM construct, I thought it was a very fruitful mission. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, I know, we've interviewed a bunch of people now for the Combat Leadership podcast, and as you know, Michael, our mission here is to pass on, your experience and insights and those of others to young warriors, and some that aren't even warriors yet. And really, the reality is some that aren't even born yet. I don't know what the internet's going to look like 100 years from now, but these episodes will be out there in some form. So. I really appreciate your time investment here. I want to ask you about the benefit of mentors and coaches, for lack of a better way of saying it. I mean, I know in the Marine Corps that I was in, 74 to 98, I'm sure it's no different in this respect. Mentorship and having your peers and juniors and seniors just take you under your wing, their wing, and pass on tribal knowledge. That was a big deal. I learned so much more than any formal school or anything like that. That's what made me as a Marine. I'm assuming that you benefited from the same concept. Are there any people that were really significant in your career that you'd like to call out as being just exceptional as a mentor and really influential as far as steering you when you might have been young and impressionable?
Sure. I'm going to do a lot of people a disservice because there was literally so many of them.
Oh yeah, of course.
It was at every step of my career, I felt like I was literally working with some of the best people that I could be working with. There's so many out there from, I'll never forget Sergeant Dodd, and Sergeant Goodman. I mean, those are two really influential gentlemen who were there in doing my first tour at Echo Company 2-8 and Weapons Platoon. And just really holding a much higher standard and leading in a much different way, than everyone else around them. And there was a bunch of others too. And I feel, again, I'm doing everyone a disservice. And then Lieutenant Stubbs, I'll never forget him. He jokingly said he had more time as a Navy enlisted guy than he did as a lieutenant, because he was in the BUDS training, and he just got injured too many times and rolled out of BUDS training, and then ended up getting his commission, and was like, no, I want to be in ground combat. I'll go be a Marine officer then. And he ended up as a 03 officer, and he was just a great influence in my early career. And then I got really, really lucky as well in that I had a corps of Lance corporals that I got to go through SOI with, and all of us were constantly trying to make each other better and competing pretty heavily, but helping each other along the way. It always stayed very positive. And there was about 6 or 7 of us, a guy named Gonzalez, a guy named Shepard, and Cheatham, and a few others. And a bunch of them ended up becoming, chief warrant officers and EOD and master gunnery sergeants. And one of my best friends, Jen Zorson, machine gunner, has been a great influence for a very long time, and held a really high standard as far as be proficient at what you own, and he taught me a lot about the machine gun. Just numerous all the way throughout. Still in touch with all or some of those early compadres? Jens and I are best friends. We're brothers from another mother, so I still talk to him quite a bit. Every once in a while, Lieutenant Stubbs, who retired, Lieutenant Colonel Stubbs, will come on and off the net, and every once in a while I'll get a touch point with others. Yeah, that's a point I'd like to highlight to the young listeners. Just same as you, Michael, I still routinely talk to Marines that I first met and served with in 1974, 76. I was a drill instructor, 77, 78, and I'm still in touch with some of my recruits. So my point to the young fellas, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, is even if you're in a not so good situation right now, you think you're in a bad unit or whatever, you really are surrounded by friends, and you are going to keep in contact with some of these folks for the rest of your life. And you may not realize at this time how good of friends they are, how much you do enjoy them, but you'll have that revelation someday. What's your thoughts on that, Michael? That's absolutely true. I mean, you're making, or you're going to make lifelong relationships that are going to be as close as family members, and if you go to combat together, are going to be even closer in some ways, because there's just going to be a level of understanding. When you suffer together, you become very close, and sometimes that's just lots of hikes with a heavy ruck on your back, and sometimes that's combat, and you get very close with those individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to ask some questions, and we're not talking right now, Michael. These questions are not aimed at the general average warrior. We're talking leaders now, specifically leaders. So
Yeah.
you have young corporals and sergeants out there right now. They may not even have deployed yet, much less been in combat. So clearly, if they go to combat and they stay in, they're going as leaders. They're going as NCOs or staff NCOs. You got young lieutenants and captains, now majors who haven't got combat experience. So I wanted to get your thoughts on your philosophy on combat leadership. If someone came up to you and said, okay, Michael, listen, I've been in 4 years, I've been in 5 years, I know what Marine Corps leadership is.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what your view of combat leadership is. Is there a difference? And, what is combat leadership as seen by Master Sergeant Halterman?
Combat leadership, I really think that it is the Marine Corps does a really good job of giving you a construct and a system to hone your overall leadership, and it transitions over immediately as soon as the first shot is fired. And it really is maximizing every opportunity in training so that you're getting yourself mentally prepared to deal with all of the things that you're going to hear about in the schools, as far as fog of war, frictions, and being able to deal with those all while bullets are flying. And I think the Marine Corps does a really good job of getting you as prepared as possible without actually shooting at you.
Yeah.
It's really the final gap is still being able to critically and creatively think under time constraints and not knowing all the information while people's lives are on the line. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure we have some out there, and now of all ranks, saying, if I go as a leader, am I going to do okay? And I think you just said, hey, by the time you go, you're going to be trained. You'll be ready. You'll be inexperienced but ready. This is really for the young troops out there looking up at their brand new lieutenant. It looks like he hasn't even shaved yet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, I got 3 years in, the lieutenant's got 1 year in.
Mm-hmm.
If we go, he's young.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think anyone that goes to combat at any grade is equipped to at least be an adequate combat leader once the first round goes downrange?
Absolutely. I mean, we all the gentlemen, almost all the leaders who were doing the real fighting in World War II on Normandy Beach had zero experience.
Yeah.
And we won the day, right? And then there's so many other examples of that. And it's in the times that we have right now are the times you need to maximize the opportunities to get repetition. When we think about, great athletes and we look at them because they're so great at things, we forget that it took them millions of repetitions to be able to get to that greatness and that ability to be able to take the shot at when the buzzer, is going off and all that. And it's the same, you're steadily marching towards the buzzer, and it's that first shot going off. You need to get as many reps in as possible so that you're ready when that opportunity occurs. And as far as, the really young, green, if you will, or inexperienced leader, they're absolutely capable. And it's really going to come down to, did they build trusting relationships with, their platoon, their section, or whatever unit they're leading. And do they have good communication to be able to make, the right choices at the right time and in critical moments.
Yeah, I agree with that. You've had the opportunity in both, in your deployment with 2-8 and then with, MARSOC. And so you also, you saw a lot of combat leaders. You also saw combat leaders from other services.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the very best now, the top, let's say, top 15, 20%, the guys that even in combat stand out,
Mm-hmm.
Are there any traits and characteristics that you think the very best combat leaders share amongst themselves?
Absolutely. the best combat leaders that I've had the privilege of observing, and there's been quite a few of them. All of them were always calm, cool, and collected, and it did not matter what was going on. One case in point was we were in Western Afghanistan. We were at our fob. We took some rounds, and then the rounds picked up and they turned into mortars, and that very rapidly turned into a pretty good firefight, which is all things that we can completely control and handle. But then all the frictions started applying themselves at the exact same time. We had something literally light on fire that had nothing to do with, the actual gunfight, but we had an electrical malfunction that lit part of the fob on fire. So now we're in a firefight fighting a fire. And then we had school children who didn't understand what was going on, running across the battlefield, trying to get away from it, but they're actually running through it. And then, then the radios stopped working, and then we couldn't communicate with each other effectively. So then it just kept layering on. And then in my limited experience in the combat that I have had, it almost always works out that way. It is never the perfect training scenario. It's always going to get layered on. It's always going to be a little bit harder than you could have conceived of, because why would all these things happen at the same time? And the leader that stays calm, cool, collected, and just starts incrementally making decisions based off of what has to happen next, because they're staying calm and they're not freaking out.
Yeah.
Inherently and almost always win the day or make the best of a really terrible situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'd like to go a bit deeper on that. As you know, peacetime exercises rarely go as scripted. And peacetime, when you're controlling it all, those kids are not there. You're really not getting shot at. So the message I'm sending to the young fellas is, hey, if peacetime doesn't go well and it's all scripted and you control everything, why would you expect everything to unfold as you thought it would be during the op order or walking through the terrain model? You think, Michael, that the default setting should be expect the unexpected, because it is going to happen?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The scenario that drives everybody crazy, there's a few of them, where as you pick up proficiency in the crawl, walk, run scenarios of training that we inherently do, they start putting the leaders down, right? And they start becoming the casualties, or they tell you can't use a piece of equipment because it's been destroyed, so on and so forth. And it usually frustrates guys, but that's the reality of what usually happens.
Yeah.
And so being thrown into those scenarios, and even the absolute curveballs, you're like, that's never going to happen. They almost always happen in some weird fashion. For some reason, those things always happen. And oh, by the way, during that same firefight, we had an unscheduled air delivery coming in. We couldn't wave the plane off because we couldn't get calm with the plane. And then he drops, a month's worth of food right in the middle of the firefight. So we're trying to wave this plane off, keep them safe. Now we've got to go get our food. So that just layered in another factor, and it just,
absolutely. Well, I want to talk about what I call discipline, and I want to make. So let me give you what I think first. Discipline, as I say, a disciplined Marine or soldier or SEAL means that person has self-control, self-discipline. He can control his emotions and desires and anger and all of that and frustrations. He can control that under sustained, austere combat conditions. A lot of times we equate discipline with, guys marching and having pressed uniforms and all of that. And we're going to get to that. But when I talk about discipline, the end state is the guy that may not necessarily have taken a shower in 35 days, and he may not be looking all that good right now relative to what the first sergeant expects on the parade ground. But man, his weapon is clean. The freaks are right on the radios. The headlights are taped up on the Humvees. Everything is right. It's that kind of discipline to do it. And more importantly, to do it without a whole lot of supervision, to do it with initiative and all of that. Now, if that's the end state, the young Marines and soldiers and everybody else are being told the same thing you were in the late 90s and the same thing I was in the 70s and 80s. Hey, haircuts, barrack inspections, staying off the grass, all sorts of what, they would, has been for generations termed chicken shit. First of all, you got to do it. Second of all, you don't got to like it, but you got to do it. And third, this is the kind of stuff that'll keep you alive. I mean, I think sometimes our leaders, do a great disservice to this stuff by saying this will keep you alive. And people are like, okay, how is shining my boots going to keep me alive? I'd like to hear your thoughts because you were a peacetime Marine before you were in combat, and then you went back to being peacetime, then you went back in combat. Does any of this garrison stuff that our young, soldiers and warriors are being exposed to, does any of it have any utility in developing habits and traits and characteristics that do matter in combat?
Absolutely. Short answer, absolutely. Longer answer is leadership does a disservice to the force when they don't help them connect the dots on why. You kind of alluded to it a little bit in the preface of the question of, leadership really needs to do the extra effort. And that's, those are the great leaders I got to observe of. This is why getting a haircut every week matters. This is why the boot band matters. This is why, right. That thing is not actually going to keep you alive. It's the action of the discipline of maintaining it that equates to just what you said, maintaining your weapon, making sure that you don't bang it around, making sure that it's within one arm's distance, and all of the other things that we're accountable for, the thousands of dollars to millions of dollars worth of gear that we're expected to maintain that keeps us alive, let alone the individual actions that we need to maintain while in an austere environment for months on end. And now it's been, you're on a 10-hour patrol. You haven't had anything to eat. All you want to do is flop down, but you really need to slowly go down to a knee. But really, before you do that, you need to do an IED sweep and make sure it's the right position. Yeah. It's those little tiny disciplines, and it's a slippery slope. Once you start giving those things up in garrison, you're not going to do them. I've watched it not happen for certain units in a combat environment. And it's really the leaders need to take the extra effort and help connect those dots.
Yeah, let's talk about that a bit. This concept is not new. I call it the combat genie. I was taught long ago that there's no fairy waiting for you, at the line of departure with a magic wand, and you're a shit individual or a shit unit, and you really haven't trained hard, or you're not a disciplined unit. Far from it. And all of a sudden you're in theater, and automatically it's like, okay, no shit, fellas, it's real now. Let's go. You may say that, and everybody may say, yeah, it's real. Let's do it. But the fact is, you're not that does not make you.
Yeah, you don't know how.
Right. Yes. And so what I'm saying is being a self-disciplined person, and then a unit full of that in itself requires reps. It requires reps in peacetime prior to combat. You just can't invent that stuff just because now it's like, we're here, it's serious, high pucker factor. Everybody, okay, we're good, right? We're gonna do it. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
No, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, so the metaphor I would use is and you see it in every single sport. You don't rise to the occasion without hundreds or thousands or millions of reps. You fall to your lowest level of training. So whatever your lowest level of training is, that's the level that you're going to actually get to.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have all of those reps in of knowing the details of how that mortar tube fires after so many rounds, and how that mortar tube needs to be cleaned to make sure that it continues to fire well, and all the other weapon systems, that those little minute details, you're just not going to magically have it. Just like you said, there's no magic genie going, oh, here's how you do it. You've got to learn it. You've got to grind it out over months and years and hone your craft. And you've got to do it day in and day out.
Yeah. To the experienced eye, Michael, which you have and had, I'd like you to talk about this for the younger guys. I've been retired from the Marine Corps 22 years now, but if they brought me back and said, Mike, you got activated and you're going to deploy to combat, that's the bad news. The good news is we're going to give you your pick of the unit. And so for the next 10 days, you get to go around, let's say it's a company size element, they're going to attach me to a company. You're going to get to go around and spend 3 or 4 days with each of these 3 rifle companies. And at the end, we need you to pick one and say, okay, I'll go with Bravo Company and all of that. I maintain that just by what I see, without even saying a word to these Marines, I'm just off to the side, without even saying a word, without them talking to me, just by me living with them, watching them operate, watching them work with each other, watching how their leaders interact with each other and with the Marines, I can tell probably within the first day with each of those companies if I want to go to combat with them or not. And a lot of times people say, well, how do you do that, Mike? Do you look at haircuts? Well, no, I'm not really. I mean, that's an indicator if it's peacetime, but it's just the experienced eye. Do you agree with that kind of concept that all else being equal, if you were given a choice between Unit A and Unit B and you got to spend time with each of them, there would be almost a feel for you looking, and sometimes it's just kind of, you really can't put your finger on it. It's like, I'm not going with that company if I have a choice.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, and real quick caveat, because we are talking a lot about haircuts, boot bands, shaves, and all the things that drive guys nuts. I'm not advocating that actual thing is actually important. I am advocating, though, that the daily discipline of doing it and doing it correctly and owning it and saying that, yes, I'm going to be known as the guy who does X, Y, and Z every single time has huge payoff. Yeah. So just throwing that out there. But
well, let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah. So am I correct in assuming that when you went with MARSOC that you were under the relaxed grooming standards?
To a degree, but that wasn't the point. The point was the expectation level of needing to tell you what to do on the baseline Marine Corps stuff is now over. And if you can't maintain it, you don't belong here. Because now there's a whole nother level of stuff that we're going to ask you to do. Yeah. And if you can't do the base level stuff, you don't belong here. And we weed a lot of those guys out in assessment and selection and then in ITC, because you have to just be able to do all of that without even thinking about it. I mean, it's just the maintenance of your weapon, and then the maintenance of yourself and your gear has to just be down pat. And then you can layer in the rest of it. Yeah, that's really can sniff that out in the first, when you were, going back to what you said about a unit, you can sniff that out in a half a day, probably.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I want to talk just a little bit more, so I don't want to beat it to death, but about the haircuts. So to the young troops out there, if you're in a conventional unit, regular infantry unit, regular Navy, regular, not special operations at all, I don't think there's anybody out there that thought, hey, just as a regular grunt or a supply guy or a motor T driver, I'm shocked that they're expecting me to look good in uniform, to have a regulation haircut or whatever. So my point is, and most career Marines would look at this and say, hey, all you got to do nowadays is just have clean camis. You don't even have to shine your boots anymore. You have to have a regulation haircut, not a high and tight, regulation haircut. And if you can't do that, not only do you have no hope of being a special operator one day if that's what you want to do, but you're not even being a good average grunt, a good conventional soldier. Now, that said, I think a lot of younger guys look up to the soft guys that, they just look cool. They got the beards, they got, and all of that. And I think when they're young, and the soft guys, are cocky and they see this and and the younger guy believes that these guys, man, you get in this unit and you don't have to follow the rules anymore. And my belief is, well, they may not be following the rules on grooming, for this deployment and all of that. But I can assure you that the discipline level and the attention to detail and the bias for action and the what's expected with minimal supervision is way several levels higher than what you're experiencing right now in a regular line company. So don't let appearances, they may look like they're just pirates and vagabonds or whatever, but there's a whole lot more to this than meets the eye. Do you agree with that? And would you expand?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a purpose to all of those things, right? The different gear sets, the beards, and maybe a little bit longer hair, and all of those. All of it is driven by purpose. It isn't just for because there's a want to have extra privileges, right? They all have a specific purpose. And anytime once I became a team chief, once I was leading 16 guys, a 16 man team, I knew that if I was going to go interface with the Marine Corps and ask for some sort of support, I would make sure that I had a haircut. I would make sure that I was wearing the proper uniform that they expect to see a Marine in. And I would make sure that I looked squared away so that I was presenting myself in the most professional manner. When I went back to my team and it was time to go on mission, then it was time to put on, my jersey, right? And go out and do work. But, and it's probably seen more now, but we're not running around looking like land pirates all the time. And we know how to adapt very quickly based on the environment we're in for very specific purposes. But being understanding the base level expectations of the Marine Corps needs to be able to be adhered to without even thinking about it, so that you can layer on massive amounts more of responsibility. Yeah,
I agree with that. Let's talk a little bit about the munchkin that is out there. I'm not a garrison Marine. I'm a field Marine. Personally, every Marine that ever told me that to my face was really a substandard Marine.
Yeah.
I had one tell me, I was a commanding officer of a weapons company headed to the Gulf War. Yeah. And I had a young lance corporal that had always been in trouble. I got briefed on him, and he cockily, if not arrogantly, told me, I'm the best 50 cal gunner in this company. And I said, well, I don't doubt that. In fact, I've heard that, but I'm telling you, I'm putting on notice right now that in this company, we don't have field Marines and garrison Marines. We have Marines, and he just didn't get it. And we ended up leaving him. We went to the Gulf War, and we left the very best machine gunner in the battalion because he was ill-disciplined, and his squad, his people, his Marines, his section did not trust him. I didn't put the X on his forehead. His peers said, if anyone is going to go to sleep on us at night, when he's supposed to be awake, it's this guy. If anyone is going to shoot someone that doesn't need shooting, it's this guy. Yeah. If anyone isn't going to check where his rounds are going, he's going to kill friendly forces 3,000 meters away, it's this guy. And so I had the authority to say, I want to FAP this guy out. So the guy that considered himself John Basilone, a field Marine, and really was on the gun, probably the best, most accurate shooter. We left him behind because it wasn't worth the risk. Right. The liabilities were greater than the benefit. So I took, if 10 was the best machine gunner, I took a whole bunch of 7s and 8s, and I left a 10 back home. Yep. And with no regrets. And then he was waiting for us when we got back. And I didn't feel bad about it, but I had a little bit of sorrow for him because he watched all of his buddies get off the bus who had just gotten back from kicking some ass. Yep. And he just kind of stood there, and he had been, helping the rear area guys, get wall lockers ready and stuff ready for us to return. So any thoughts on the garrison versus the field guy?
I mean, that story you just told, I've watched unfold in various forms in every unit I've been in. I've watched it unfold in all my buddies' units, and it comes down to you have to build trust as an individual. You can be great at a tactical level, whatever, but that's not the full package, and that's not what the Marine Corps is asking you to do. You literally have to do everything. You don't get to pick and choose. If you got to pick and choose, it would be a different Marine Corps. It would be a different situation. So look, no, there's no such thing as a garrison or a field Marine. And yes, I was a Lance Corporal too, and it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. And I you know, on a different side of this argument, probably back then, but I had really good leaders like Sergeant Dodd, like Sergeant Goodman, like Lieutenant Stubbs, who sat me down and said, no. It doesn't work that way. You don't get to pick and choose. Like here's how you connect the dots. If I can't trust you to the air cut, I can't trust you to shoot the right people in combat.
Yeah.
And once those gears clicked for me, it became a no-brainer.
Yeah. I got another story on this, Michael. I interviewed a Marine company commander. It was a company commander in the Second Fallujah.
Yeah.
So fierce fighting, one of the epic battles in Marine Corps history now.
Really? Yeah.
And he had taken over the company just recently. And this guy was highly decorated from prior tour in Iraq. Very well-known combat leader. And now he's got a company, and he's only got it for a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And he's got a fairly new battalion commander. So long story made short, they're within a couple days of assaulting into Fallujah to kick some ass. And there's bad guys waiting. And we all know what Fallujah was. Yeah. And so he really didn't know his company that well. He'd only been there like 10 days maybe or less. But the battalion commander said, hey, listen, we have need for working parties to remain behind to handle like graves registration and other stuff that needs to be handled. And he essentially said, if there's anyone in your companies that their squad mates and platoon mates do not feel comfortable going in with, the guy that's going to fall asleep, the guy that's not going to cover his six, the guy that's just not going to be a good Marine, I would strongly urge you to leave those guys in these working parties, because while they're critical and they're necessary work, they're not going to put someone's life at risk. We can minimize it. And so he said, I had to delegate that decision to platoon commanders, but more importantly, staff NCOs and NCOs. Mm-hmm. And he said the rosters were produced within a half an hour. Mm-hmm. In other words, all the squad leaders and platoon sergeants knew who their turds were. Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, I got 3 guys that I really don't want to fight with. And no one wants to fight with.
3 guys short. Yeah, I will go 3 guys short on a 10-man mission.
Yes.
Because I think it's safer for the 7. Even though I'd rather have 15, I think it's safer for us 7 because I trust these 7 to outwork and then not have to worry about the 3 that'll get us all killed.
Yes, and this captain said, he believed him. He believed what they were saying. He asked him about each man, and it was always a consistent thing. We can't trust him. Bottom line, we can't trust this guy. Mm-hmm. He's a turd. He was a turd in the rear. He's been a turd here. He's been a discipline problem here. He's the guy that even on patrol we have to, hey, look at your sector of fire. Like, hey, you're supposed to be checking the roofs on the left side of the road. Let's go, get into it. Mm-hmm. And he said, so he saw that whole working party, coming up to the headquarters, where they were staying in an abandoned building. And he said he just saw him. And he realized that at that point, several of them realized the magnitude of it. Mm-hmm. Like, man, I am thought of so little by my peers. I can't even go in and potentially die with them. Mm-hmm. Like I've been shunned. I've been cast away from my tribe from not being a good tribal member. Mm-hmm. And he said, I actually felt pity for them at that point. And then of course the rest is history. The next day they assaulted in and they were in savage combat, for the next several days and all of that. So I'm saying this and I'm, getting your info and your input, Michael, because it's everything, I'm looking at you right now. Listeners, Michael and I are looking at each other on video. So we're nodding our head. We believe all this stuff. Yeah. But hopefully, some Lance Corporal or high school kid or sergeant is sitting back there saying, "Oh, I didn't know that stuff ever happened."
And hopefully there's some squad leaders, some team leaders, and some platoon sergeants going, oh, maybe here's a way I can crack through this kid. Maybe here's a way I can reignite that fire and get him motivated to understand, like, here's the string of consequences and here's where it ends up.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, I'm speaking for myself, Michael. I, as a Marine, former enlisted Marines, finished up as an officer, I truly I could not live with myself. I'd rather be dead knowing that my fellow Marines thought so little of me that they wouldn't even allow me to go in and fight next to them.
Yeah.
Forget being their leader or their captain or their officer, but they thought so little of me, they couldn't even trust me to hump ammo for them.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I would react to that. To me, that would have been a crushing blow to me because I became a Marine to do that stuff. And so if you're telling me I'm not trusted to do it, you're telling me I'm not a Marine, essentially. So any last thoughts on this, and we'll move on? Build
trust. Whether you're the new guy on the team or you're one of the leaders, everything we do is built on trust. And I really can't stress that enough. If you want to lead or be a really good follower and get and learn how to be a leader, it's all about trust. Yeah. Let's change gears, go down another avenue here, so to speak. Let's talk about mental toughness. Again, you've got a broad spectrum of perspective and all of that. You got to be mentally tough to survive in combat. And I'm talking about not just a firefight, but you've been in Iraq and it's the 4th month and everybody's lost at least 25 pounds. It's 120 degrees and it just sucks. Every time you go to sleep, they start mortaring. It just, you've been there, done that. And a lot of the younger guys have read about it, but they don't understand just how much the sustained suck can get to you. You're just tired of it. And I say the only thing that keeps you together is self-discipline, unit discipline, respect for your comrades, and not wanting to let them down. But a big part of the glue that holds that together, I maintain, is individual mental toughness. And I'd like to, and like discipline, I maintain that while that can be sharpened and brought to the forefront in combat under fire for when it's real, just like discipline, I think mental toughness is a learned quality. And it's too late to think about it by the time, when you're on your flight over or the ship over. I'd like to hear your thoughts about mental toughness for just the general warrior and some things that you think are good ways to cultivate it. So, I mean, it's so closely parallel to discipline because discipline is its own mental toughness, right? Discipline is almost, it's the long grinding version of being able to daily do the right thing is its own form of mental toughness. So I think it's another reason why all of the previous conversation is so important. Everything I experienced in the grunts as far as, training scenarios that continue to push your ability to make decisions under pressure with lack of information or lack of assets that you need to be ultimately at your best. All of those things help create incrementally. Every rep you get in just gives you a little bit more resilience and toughness. And even just the act of just sticking it out, with a smile on that hump that is kicking your ass. Right. And you've got a choice at all times of how you're going to present yourself. And you can have the mental toughness just to put a smile on your face and check on your buddy, as opposed to going internal. Right. And woe is me party. And it's just those little tiny acts that you can cultivate your own mental toughness. And I think I learned it a lot on hikes. I'm a short guy. I'm 100 nothing pounds, and I'm 5 foot nothing. So being able to stick it out on a hike, and it took me a long time to get good at it. My buddy Jens will tell you, I sucked at it coming in as a young grunt. But you grind, you keep working at it, and that equates to Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever guys may end up in the future. Those environments are going to suck, but you still got to get a workout in. You still got to maintain your gear. You've still got to, and all of those things require the mental fortitude to do the right thing and not be hounded about it. Yeah. You just reminded me of something. I interviewed well, let me tell you this. Every special ops guy that I've interviewed so far has mentioned getting a workout in. Yep.
And I know we've probably got some people out there rolling their eyes saying, I was an infantry Marine in Afghanistan. What the hell are you talking about getting a workout in?
No.
And what they all said was, well, look, when we were back at the FOB, some of us actually were in FOBs where you could actually go for a run.
Yep.
It was large enough, or they had a gym with a treadmill
Yep.
in it, and all that.
Yep.
But he said, even when we were way out on our patrol bases, if it was manned combat outposts that, units used to rotate in and out, he said almost invariably, if it wasn't there, they would put them there. They would make it to where there were pull-up bars in those forward outposts. So we're not running here. I mean, we go outside this FOB, we're getting shot, shot at. But in here, we've actually got a little competition going.
Yeah.
We're getting, we're going to be out here for 4 weeks, and we're seeing who gets the most pickup on their pull-ups, who's going from 20 to 26 while we're out here. And he said it became a competition. They all say, I'm generalizing now, Michael. They're all saying it became like a competition, a motivator. But the reality was it was good for them physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
Because just getting on the bar and pulling and all of that kept the blood flowing, and it's scientifically proven it keeps your mind sharp and all of that. So I wanted to hear your thoughts about that, because I do think it's detrimental for people to go into combat deployments, because we're going into physical conditioning now as a topic. I think it's detrimental to go into combat deployments for 4 months, 6 months, whatever, and just take your pack off literally and just say, I'm just going to deteriorate and whatever it is, because, maybe the real shit you're getting into is at the 4-month mark.
Yeah.
And if you're 4 months into degradation, could make a difference. Any thoughts on that?
No, you have to continue moving your body forward and getting better, because there's no stasis in the middle. You're either moving forward or, just like you said, you're degrading. So even on those combat outposts where you're standing a ton of watch, you're not getting sleep, food is, garbage or scarce or both. There's no place you can't not do calisthenics. You can totally crush yourself in 2 minutes, just doing flutter kicks and mountain climbers. And oh, by the way, that's pretty good cardio. And you can do it in place. A jump rope is one of the best tools that is completely underutilized by the force to get cardio standing in place. And I like most of my team, especially on that first deployment, we were fortunate. We had it was a forward position, but we had just enough room. We would walk in squares with a ruck on and get rucks in to build leg strength, to keep endurance, to be able to, just like you said, because the fight's not over till you're on the plane and you left the country. And you have to be physically and mentally prepared all the way until the last day.
Yep. And so, like I said, with discipline, discipline, the end state is the guy that's, can control his emotions, blah, 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 in sustained combat. The reason why we're talking about physical conditioning, maybe I should start calling it combat endurance, is my idea. The important thing is in the 14th week in Iraq and Afghanistan or in the jungle, has your pre-deployment training resulted in a human body and a mind that can sustain itself? It's still effective, and that is, to me, the only reason why we do PT. It's not to get 6-pack abs. Yes, you got to take a PFT, you got to get a score to get promoted and all that. Yep. But all I care about is, can that person motor, 4 months into can he physically cope with the demands of his job, whether it's driving a truck, firing a mortar, humping a ruck, whatever the case may be. So now that I've defined that, and that's what we're talking with, what's your opinion on things that people could and should be doing prior to deploying? If there's one area where I think units, I'm not talking soft units now, because I don't know how good you guys are. I presume that you probably were physically capable, most of you, if not all of you, but regular line units, this is where I think some leaders might take corners and just do boring PT. That's just, it just bores the shit out of Marines and, and soldiers. And it just doesn't get them any fit.
Yeah.
If you had to go take over again as a platoon sergeant, a platoon commander or whatever, what kind of stuff, knowing what you know now about the demands of combat 4 months in, what kind of stuff would you emphasize?
There would be a lot more. And I was really fortunate is I got to do a lot of it in my, in Echo Company 2-8 before there was a war. We did a lot of dragging our buddies around, whether that was firemen's carries or lots of different ways to evac guys, because it is hard. It works out your entire body. And you've got to, as the smallest guy, which is almost always me, I've got to figure out how to move the biggest guy with all of his stuff on.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think could maybe I've seen in other places get underutilized. That is like, it is extremely fruitful. The other thing that I saw got underutilized quite a bit that I did a lot of in special operations was the O course. I mean, that is really demanding in a lot of different ways on the body, and all of those, absolutely all of those relate to combat. The pushing, the pulling, the getting over things, the sprinting from, instead of sprinting from obstacle to obstacle, you're sprinting from cover to cover, but they all relate. And then the upper body strength that comes with it. And just all that is a great full body workout that you really can't do enough. And yes, there's the risk of injury and all of those things, and you got to weigh all that out, but I think it needs to get utilized more. And those are two that should be able to be done with it. That's a 1 hour ORM and maybe a half a day of coordination, and you should have it locked on for the next day.
Yeah.
And then and hiking, and probably the pool. The pool is probably the most underutilized, even though we say we're amphibious.
Yeah.
You get a group of Marines in the pool and you'll see who's actually amphibious. The pool will do a lot for mental toughness. Because when you start sucking water instead of sucking air, really, you start building a lot of mental toughness. And I think, and I didn't get a lot of pool time before special operations, and I realized what a difference maker it was when I had just really hard force recon Marines telling me, nope, keep going. Nope, keep going. And it was a huge difference maker in me becoming much more adept, both physically and mentally.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about humps. In my day at Camp Lejeune, money was tight.
Sure.
And the rule back then, I think this was the same way at Camp Pendleton, to save money on fuel.
Yeah.
If your unit was going to a range or a training area and it was under 10 miles.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
You had to hump. You humped there. So if you're going out in the field for 3 days, you automatically were doing 10 miles out and 10 miles in. That was a given. And then all the stuff you were going to do in between. And, I was like you, when I first started as a Marine, I sucked at humps. I hated humps. I didn't see the friggin' utility. I just hated them. And then I realized I was getting tougher by them. And I realized, hey, this is what Marines do. I mean, we don't get rides most of the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking now to the young Marines that, might want to go easy, young soldiers, young NCOs might want to go easy. If I was deploying and I had only a couple months left, I had a very limited time to train my force. And I had a choice between, during the next 2 months, to focus on running or humping. Personally, I would do very little running, aside from maybe some sprints, but I'd hump the hell out of them.
Yeah, especially at the NCO level. You're not creating the training plan, but you're privy to the training plan.
Yeah.
You should absolutely be back planning in the training plan. Okay, if we've got a hump of this distance coming up with this much weight is the expectation, I need to, as an NCO, get my team, my gun squad, whatever it is, I need to get them some reps with a little less weight and a little less distance.
Yeah.
So I'm helping build them up to it.
Yes.
You shouldn't be completely relying on the unit with the 20-mile hump at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter. Like, you need to get your wheels spinning and get moving. And maybe that does start out with a couple of runs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Just to get everybody moving. And then you transition them over with lightweight and slowly move them up to make sure they're ready.
Well, you're onto something. You're talking about the NCOs, and I wanted to ask you about this. I know that you've seen units. I've seen it. I've led units this way where it's like, hey, the hump is over and you saw guys from X platoon or this platoon or that company dropping out. And fellas, I'm telling you, we ain't dropping out ever. The standard is we die and then we go in the truck, but we're not dropping out. We are completing humps. We don't. And I often found that NCO leadership with that kind of mindset, the same Marines to their left and right. You have one platoon in a rifle company where other Marines are dropping out because of the heat, but there's one platoon or one squad. There's no drops. They just never drop. Yeah. And they're on the same PT program, on the same everything. The difference is the leadership and the expectations, I think. Any thoughts? Have you observed that yourself?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think all of it plays into it. I mean, there's a teamwork mental toughness that's created with saying we're not those guys, right? Or we are first squad. We don't drop anybody. We make sure everybody makes it, and holding those high bars, to make sure everybody knows that, yeah, everybody else's standards right here, but our standards up here. I do think though that there's some onus on the leadership to make sure that everybody can get to that bar, and help them build a plan to help get your lowest guy to help them get there. If they don't achieve, there's some more leadership that needs to go into it, maybe in a different direction. But, I think NCOs can do a lot to make sure that that's happening on their own.
Yeah, I agree with that. I certainly don't mean to imply, listeners, that, sergeants barking at their squad saying, well, we're tough because I said so. That's not going to work out too well. Yeah. What that kind of leadership and mindset does, though, it tells the guy, hey, we don't drop out because our blisters are bleeding. My foot was bleeding the whole time. My blisters popped in the first mile, and I did the last 10. And that's the kind of mental tough. We don't drop out because of blisters. You know what I mean? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Whereas someone that didn't receive that kind of leadership, it's like, okay, I'm in the truck. I'm in the truck. And that I find that once the first person goes in a truck for a bullshit reason, Michael, others follow very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you develop a mindset. You have a unit that becomes okay with being known as the platoon that drops out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I'll give credit to Captain Yo. I just remembered his name. We may or may not have had that problem at one point. And he said, okay, all right, I get it. Now, every time somebody goes down for a heat case, they're getting their core temperature checked in front of everybody. So you get to be the guy that gets to be, core checked in front of everybody. And that magically went away. That was,
Yeah, so for you young folks that don't know what Michael's talking about, core check means the silver bullet, right, Michael? So if you are really a heat casualty, now you can die. You young folks don't know about this yet. You can die. So if you're in high school listening to this, or ROTC, you may not know that this. Your temperature gets up too high. You can literally fry yourself to death.
Or all the way up to you can fry your kidneys. Yeah, and then you start frying your brain, and then you die.
So they have to know that the corpsmen, the medics, have to know where you're at right away as far as temperature. So how they do that is they pull your pants down and stick a rectal thermometer up your ass. Yeah. And the rectal thermometer is euphemistically called the silver bullet. Yeah. And so what it appears your captain did is, if you're out, the impression was probably some people saying that they're out are faking it a little bit.
Right.
And if you're willing to fake it to the point that you're going to get the silver bullet in front of the whole battalion, so be it. Yeah. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to ask you. I suspect that drops were reduced significantly shortly thereafter that announcement.
Correct. Yeah.
Silver bullet's bad enough if you need it. No one wants to take it voluntarily in public.
Front of everyone. Yeah.
I guess some people would call that hazing, but I would not. I mean, because the silver bullet is literally the go-to. That's the first thing the corpsman has to do. And if you got somebody in the ground saying he's a heat casualty or faking it, you got to get that core temperature. So I thought that was
trying to save a life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, the last thing I wanted to ask you is, I keep, we're focusing on the 4th month, the 14th week, 25 pounds, lighter and all of that. Have you been experienced, Michael, with the triathlete the rear area guy that just is a premier athlete, but then you get him in there, and after 3 or 4 tough weeks without his right kind of chow and all that, he just falls to shit?
Mike, that's a great question. I've definitely seen that several times, and I think it happens for two really big reasons. And one, and they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, they overlap a little bit, but here's the two big reasons I've seen. One, it's someone who's not had to cope with failure. Someone who's really not ever hit the wall before and understand what failure really is.
Yeah.
And so it's the first time where they don't make their time. It's the first time where they don't, they're not the lead of the pack, or the 31st pull up, or all of those little things that they're used to being. And that can mentally make someone just spiral after that. And then I guess the other reason that I've seen is why someone can go from, star athlete to really not coping with an austere environment it's just that. It is an austere environment, and it takes a different level of mental fortitude to eat less, to sleep less, and do more, and still put out at a high performance. And maybe that is closely related to it's its own form of failure in a way. So maybe they're a little closer related than I initially thought, but definitely I've observed that plenty of times.
What do you think? Are there any lessons to be learned by that? If you're, first of all, on the individual soldier or Marine, level, what do you think? And then if you're the leader, the NCO, staff NCO, and officer, what do you tell people based upon your experience in this?
So, at the individual level, to me, it's almost always a really easy one to overcome. Get outside your comfort zone. If you're running 18-minute 3-milers and that's all you're known for, that means you're not working hard enough. Like you're not pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. So get out and do things that movements you're not used to, lifts you're not used to, programs you're not used to. Diversify your own capabilities. And that way, something new coming up won't be completely new and a complete shock to your system, and you'll be able to adapt and cope much quicker. From a leadership standpoint, it is your job, is my job, to assess what the team is good at and provide the opportunities for them to fail, provide the opportunities for them to be pushed way outside their comfort zone. And oh, by the way, it's training. It is okay for them to fail. You have to give them opportunities because they're going to learn. And I think that there's a too much dependence on, this training, and you got to do everything perfect. I disagree. It is designed to help you find those failure points, work through them, and then get another iteration where you have the opportunity to do it right.
Yeah. Good lessons. I want to clarify a little bit, or just maybe throw a little more meat on it.
Sure.
From what I heard you say on the individual level, and even the team leader level, the leadership level, we've got some young folks out there listening to this, and they may be what I used to call the gazelles, the silk short gazelles. The guy just can run. Man, he can run.
Yeah.
But just putting the body armor on him for 10 days in a row in stifling heat.
Yep.
And he's not eating good food, and he's not getting good rest and all that. And you would know, I've never worn a modern body armor, Michael. How much does it weigh? Just the body armor, the plates, the SAPI plates and all that.
Just plates is, with nothing, and I mean nothing on, but plates and your empty pouches, probably 12, 15 pounds.
Yeah. So you got 15 pounds. Let's throw a little bit of deuce gear on there, some ammo. So let's just say the guy's got 25, 30 pounds hanging off his body with no pack, no rucksack and all of that. It's just 25 or 30 pounds, but it's on his shoulders every day, weighing down his trapezius and his neck. And, just that is what I think is getting outside the comfort zone. The guy's, first of all, he's not used to it. I will tell you that whenever I went for extended periods without wearing the old-fashioned helmet, if I suddenly put it back on for a few days in the field straight, I would get a headache the first day.
Sure.
Because it only weighed a few pounds, but I just wasn't used to it anymore. Your muscles weren't used to it and all that. So I'm trying to illustrate what you're saying to the leadership and the individuals. Get outside your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And just because you're a PFT stud, an animal with that, does not mean that the slightest modification to your physical load won't throw you for a loop, especially if it's in an austere environment, and with the heat. I mean, I read about the heat that they were facing pretty much year round in Iraq, and then obviously sometimes in the summertime in Afghanistan. And I got to be honest with you, I wasn't sad to miss that. I mean, I heard about people operating in 115, 120 degrees with nearly 100% humidity day after day, and it's so hot you can't sleep at night. And I know I'm belaboring the point, Michael, but you've been there, done that, and I can't emphasize enough, and I think you agree with me, the need for combat endurance,
Absolutely.
at the 4th week, the 14th week, the 40th week, to be able to do it day in and day out without incurring physical injuries or fatigue to the point that you're not really functional anymore. You're not really checking your sector of the rooftops, and then only bad things happen.
Yeah, and I can absolutely say from personal experience, as a young Marine coming into the infantry, it took me a while to adapt to that. I was a great runner, PFT, no problem. You put weight on me though, because I'm 5 foot nothing, I'm 100 nothing pounds, and I struggled bad.
Yeah,
and it took a lot of time, extra time on my part, learning how to bear a load, right? How to better adjust the straps on a ruck and all of those things. And there was times where I absolutely failed.
Yeah.
And it was the mentors around me, my smallest unit leaders making sure that I had more opportunities to train, right? And encouraged me in the right way. Sometimes it was a foot in the rear end, and sometimes it was like, all right, hey, let's put all your stuff on and see how you're wearing it. Okay, hey, let's change this, let's change that. Let's have an in-depth conversation about it. So, it doesn't come overnight for the physical studs. Good for you. For the majority, though, probably doesn't come overnight. You got to earn it through grinding, putting in time in the rear in peacetime, and then transitioning, like you said, into a continuing to cultivate and keep that high level of physical ability out on deployment, which means, like, as you say, the 14th week, you should still be on your program, still continuing to maintain.
Yeah, great. I'm going to tell a story that I think illustrates your point. I'll let you weigh in afterward. I talked to a very experienced Army special operator, and this guy, he spanned 4 decades, I think, went from the 60s all the way to the 80s, maybe even the 90s. This guy was the real deal.
Yeah.
And he was, at one point, he did an exchange tour with one of the world's premier counterterrorism units outside the country, a foreign. I don't want to mention him, his unit, or the foreign unit. Sure. But he went through their selection process, and he said, no, it was no bullshit. It was a huge gut check. And then during the course of his 3 years there, his last year, they actually put him on the selection cadre, so he got to know more about the selection course. He told me he told me what I call the wet socks story. And he said they had a very grueling selection event where people were loaded down with weight. They're already exhausted, and they're loaded down with weight, and they've got to traverse over hilltops that are really small mountains for all day long. And he said they did it the prior week. I think the selection period was like 2 or 3 weeks long. They did it the prior week for time. And so they had a roster of who did what, who performed. And then they were going to do the same event, same weather conditions, same everything, but it's a week later. But this time they made all of the candidates jump into a nearby stream and get soaked. So now your uniform is soaked, you're soaked, and your boots and socks are soaked. And you know what that means from a humping perspective. Oh man, when those socks and the boots.
Feet destroyers.
And so they got everybody thoroughly soaked and then commenced the event. And he said the final roster was distinctly different from dry socks to wet socks. And he said it was kind of a devious thing to do because just the physical aggravation of being wet and now of getting blisters because you are soaked, you know, and your boots are wet, your feet are wet, and your blisters are popping and all of that. That's what it took to get some of those guys outside their comfort zone.
Sure.
And he thinks that it was that exercise right there that caused a few people who otherwise were doing well to voluntarily drop.
Yeah.
Like they just, you know, I don't know how long the distance was. Let's say they were 5 hours into a 10 or 12 hour hump, you know, land navigation and all that. And they just said, you know what, I think I had enough.
Yep.
You know, but they did the same thing last week, but they were dry. And so just throwing one little element of shit in the game, so to speak, totally blew some folks' mind, whether it was mentally or because they now had physical discomfort and all that. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, well, so I've watched numerous times and I've gone through it. When your feet are gone, you're probably almost done with selection. Like you're hanging on by a thread, because if everything is predicated on your ability to move, and that's on your feet. And if your feet are gone, you're probably done with selection. So that is truly devious. And I have no doubt that changed that field completely. And it is certainly a reason that, you know, certain events in the pool are used for certain times extensively, because that's another area where it really weeds out the mentally weak and the mentally strong. A good pool session definitely does the same thing. And I've watched that happen in several environments.
Well, the point, and so thank you for that, Michael. The point I'm trying to make is sometimes the environment itself throws a devious twist at you.
Sure.
So, you know, I remember being laughed at by my lieutenants going to Desert Storm. Sir, can we leave the rain gear back home? I'm like, no, bring the rain gear. And one of them said, sir, it's a desert. By definition, a desert gets less than like a half inch of rain a year. I said, bring the rain gear. Well, no shit. We get there, and I think in February, so we were in Saudi Arabia, deep in the desert, waiting to go into Kuwait, and they had a record rain spell. And I'm talking like maybe 2-3 weeks straight, almost nonstop, and it was cold too. And now it was my turn to talk shit to the lieutenants. Like, yeah, man, good thing we're in a desert, you know, it never rains out here. And we were soaked, you know, but we brought the rain gear. So my point is, you get in Afghanistan, Panama, wherever, you know, troops are going to go, don't count on the environment cooperating either, because instead of being directed to jump into the stream, you may have the stream dumped on you. With a couple of really bad, and now everything's wet. And, you know, you've been out forward, Michael. You've been out forward where nature, it's already miserable and scary enough. Now it's really miserable because nature didn't cooperate, and your food sucks, and you can't even eat up a coffee because the rain is coming in, you know, and that kind of stuff. So we're just trying, you know, you've done it. I see you nodding your head. We've all done it, but I'd say a good number of people listening to this haven't done it. And so physically and mentally, I think we're just trying to get them to think outside the box, prepare, in some cases over-prepare, and expect nature or the enemy to throw shit in the game. Just expect it, and you got to be able to deal with it. Any last thoughts on that?
I mean, I had the exact same experience in 2003 invading Iraq. We went over the border. We had been operating for couple of weeks, maybe it was somewhere in the first month, and record-sized torrential downpour. And it went from 110 just down to 80. But that's a huge difference, and you feel like you're freezing. And guys were sliding off of rooftops, literally sliding off of rooftops because there were mud built buildings and all kinds of problems. Same thing if not only does the enemy have a vote on what's going on, but so does the weather, and the weather can change its mind at any time it wants. And flooded, swollen rivers, had problems with those. So you always have to be thinking of what could happen. Not this is going to be ideal, no big deal. We'll leave the MVDs behind because we'll be home before dark.
Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about a very important topic, and that's casualties. again, even in the most realistic training, and they have, and you would know, I mean, from what I see on YouTube and the internet and all that, they got some pretty realistic training now as far as traumatic amputations and things like that. And that's good. It's better than anything I had in my day. But the fact remains, and you know what I'm talking about, Michael, there's no way you can really simulate burning hair and flesh, and that I can't even describe it, that smell of blood, know. And there's no way to really prepare someone that when an IED hits or artillery round or something, blood, it's not neat like it is in the movies. It doesn't usually go in it with one hole and come out. I mean, it's traumatic. There's chunks going around, there's spray and all of that. Now that's graphic and that's horrible enough. But now you're a young warrior and you haven't been in combat before, and it may be your first morning in combat or first hour in combat, and you may see someone in your unit become a casualty, whether wounded cleanly and he's alive, wounded cleanly and dead, or just horrific. Now the guy's alive, but he's only got the stump of one arm left. Yeah, and the other limbs are gone. And I trust you've been there, seen that. How do you prepare? If you're back in the rear, and I put the onus on this on the leaders, small unit leaders. How do you prepare your troops? And if for the individual perspective, how do you get someone, a young warrior, who at this point listening to us, they still may be anxious to go. They want to go. Yeah, I mean, we wanted to go, but how do we ground them in reality that, hey, this is a very real possibility. In fact, it's a probability if you're facing tough opposition that you're going to take casualties. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So no matter what, you have to go back to the training and the way that you're training, your team members, your platoon, your section, your squad, whomever at the small unit level. And you have to get the purpose of multiple repetitions is so that when something like that happens, not if, when something like that happens, you continue to do exactly what needs to happen next as per the SOP. So you win the gunfight because security is paramount no matter what. And once the security threat is been, reduced, then you start working on the casualty. I mean, and there's a ton of training scenarios and different ways to splice it, but no matter what, you win the fight first. And then you take care of the casualties. And whether it's your best friend or whether it's your Afghan partner who you barely know and you only speak through an interpreter, you do everything you can to take care of them. And once they're on the medevac flight out or you're sitting on them for however long, security still paramount. It's 360 degrees and it's spherical. And that's what you have to maintain no matter what. And once you get back to the rear, and you're in the safety and security of the FOB or you're back stateside or whatever that looks like, then you can start thinking about the existential realities of what that is. But all the way up until then, 360-degree security. You don't want to lose anybody else in the gunfight. Keep going.
Yeah, I love that. Keep going. I'm not sure if I've done a bunch of these interviews now. I'm not sure if I've shared this earlier in this one, but I was taught just that by a World War II veteran, Iwo Jima, Pacific campaigns. Yeah. And he told me, if you get into something serious, there's going to be casualties. And the only thing you can do is keep going. Because if you stop and stare or just break down and freeze, I guarantee you this, one thing's for certain, there's going to be a ton more casualties pretty quickly. Yeah. And there's just time later for grieving, time later for like, holy Jesus, I've never seen anything like that before. But the time for immediate actions and overwhelming firepower is when those casualties start. You gotta keep rocking and rolling.
Have to.
Yeah. Have you, I want to talk about a related topic. Have you, I don't know if this was your experience, Michael, and if so, it could be a painful one. I'd ask you to share. I'm not trying to probe too deeply, but I've talked to some folks, how do you keep going as an individual when you see someone close to you that you care for become a casualty, or you don't even have to see him. You're out on the patrol and you hear that the fob got hit with mortars and Joe's gone. So how does the individual buck up in that situation? And then as even a fire team leader, a squad leader, team leader, platoon sergeant, how do you get your soldiers and Marines to cope with that? The loss of a very popular guy, the guy everybody loves, and it's like, man, not that guy, and he's gone now, and there may not be time to grieve. You're out. You're 15 kilometers out into bad guy territory, and you're going to be out there for another 8 days. How do both segments, the individual trooper and the leaders, how do they cope with this?
Yeah. So for relative context, I did 3 Afghanistans in special operations, and all 3, we either lost somebody or had someone severely wounded and medevaced out. And every single time we lost Afghan partners, some of whom we were really close with. And so all the injuries that you've talked about thus far, we've had to deal with all of those. And at the individual level, you have to realize that you signed up for this, and that person, whether they're being medevaced out or that's the last time you get to see them, that part is over. You still have a job to do. You're still a member of a team, and you still need to keep moving forward and doing your job. And the best thing you can do is exactly that, because you don't want anybody else in your stack, in your team, your squad, your platoon to become another casualty. So you need to do your job. And the best thing you can do as an individual is do your job. So that's, to me, it's really easy to keep going. Because I know that every single guy counts and matters, and me doing my job means I'm taking care of my brothers that are still here with me right now. So that's at the individual level. As far as the leadership level, it really is making sure that you've gotten the reps during training, and that you've played through it, verbally, mentally, physically out on the training grounds in multiple scenarios, so that everyone knows, as per SOP, we lose guy X, and this is the next thing that happens.
Yeah.
So there is no hesitation. There's no wondering. It doesn't matter if you lose the squad leader. It doesn't matter if you lose the machine gunner that everybody loves, who plays the guitar and is funny as hell. It doesn't matter who you lose. Everyone needs to know what happens next, so that they just do the next step. And then you continually check on them and make sure that they continue forward. So tomorrow, we're going to run the First Force Recon in-dock route for our fallen brother, Chris Antonig. And he died July 11th, which would have been July 10th in the United States. He was, not to be overly graphic, but he was more or less cut in half by an IED. What he did in his last couple of moments was got on the radio, reported his position, everything that was going on with the enemy, and what needed to happen next. The guy that had to take over, the only guy that was right there that spoke English with a all Afghan fighting force, was the dog handler. The dog handler took over immediately and won the day. We had one casualty, one American casualty, and that was Chris. And then after that, there was some other things that happened with our Afghan partners, unfortunately, but he won the day. And, because he knew exactly what to do, what needed to happen next, and he took over immediately. And he didn't hesitate just because he was the dog handler. He didn't hesitate because he didn't know what to do. He jumped in immediately. And today he's now a Raider. He later took selection, became a Raider, and received the Navy Cross for what happened that day.
Wow, well done. Is it? I think you implied this. I'm not sure if you said it. So obviously he took over, saved the day, performed valiantly. Did he execute actions that had been rehearsed prior to leaving the FOB? Was he following the established succession plan?
He was following what needed to happen next as per what was happening on the ground.
Yep.
There was definitely some training scenarios that everyone had been through that were closely related, but it was certainly not, he wasn't expecting what was going to happen in that moment, in that day. Yeah.
But what he had been trained to do was realize, hey, it's me and I need to take over right now.
Correct.
Yeah. God bless him. Well, it sounds good, because it sounds like if he hadn't have done that, as bad as it was to lose Chris and the Afghan fellas, there probably would have been more carnage had he not.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's how you win the day. Well, listen, this has been great, Michael. I don't want to let you out of here before I ask one last question here. The fantasy question I ask everybody: if you were given the opportunity to spend a day with one leader, one combat leader from the past, is there anybody that you choose to spend this day with, and why? Yeah,
that's a tough one because there's so many amazing perspectives out there from Eisenhower, who saw the closing, the entire war unfold in World War II.
Yeah. And
then the recreation of America afterwards and becoming the president afterwards. And that perspective is just amazing to me. It would be really hard not to want to have a conversation with him and several others, to include, the Honorable James Mattis. I mean, his perspective on current and past affairs, and the insightful way with which he relates information from a very dispassionate, these are the facts perspective. Either one of those gentlemen I would be over the moon to have 5 minutes with either one of them. Yeah, good choices. Great choices, actually. It sounds like you've read up a bit on Eisenhower. I'm not a deep student of his, but I do know, amazingly, it boggles my mind, that when World War II broke out, he was a lieutenant colonel. Yeah. Because rank was real slow back then. So he was a lieutenant colonel. Yeah. And here he is, not too many years later, a 5-star general. Right. In charge of probably still to this day the most massive military operation in history. Yeah. So, there was a lieutenant colonel just ready to roll, and everything I've read about him said that he was a relentless student of his profession in the years between World War I and World War II. So when the nation needed him, Ike was ready. That was for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I'd like you to, before we let you sign off, Michael, what are you doing these days? I know you're retired, but I know you're doing some work with a great, fantastic organization. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization and how people can get involved? Absolutely. So I have the privilege of working every day to help special operations members transition out of the military at the Honor Foundation, which can be found at honor.org. I can be reached through LinkedIn. Easy to find. Michael G. Halterman on LinkedIn is definitely the best place to find me. And so I'm the director of the virtual program there. And it's pretty fortuitous the times that we're in. We're recording in the time of COVID. Hopefully it won't be the time of COVID here shortly. But we're doing a lot of virtual training and a lot of virtual transition program development. And it's a really an awe-inspiring opportunity to watch so many great Americans transition and then get into something they really enjoy, in their second or third career choice after the military. Yeah, awesome. What a noble endeavor. Well, listen, Michael, I can't thank you enough for the time you've invested. I think there's a chance that something you've said during this interview is going to stick with some young PFC and dark, dangerous spot 25, 30 years from now, and may save some lives. It could be the dog handler of the future, that rises to save the day. So I really thank you very much with the bottom of my heart. And I respectfully ask that you consider coming back again someday. Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Mike. All right. Thank you. We are rounds complete for this episode.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, and recommend to your friends. Please visit our website at combatleadership.com. Until next time, remember the words of the ancient philosopher Plato. Only the dead have seen the end of war.